Hi, I'm Chris Teutsch, Forage Extension Specialist at the University of Kentucky's Research and Education Center in Princeton, Kentucky. And this is the fifth part of hay quality, defining, quantifying, and supplementing. In part 5, we're going to talk about harvesting high-quality forage. So the question is, if we know the stage of maturity is so important when it comes to hay quality, why don't we do a better job at harvesting at the correct stage of maturity? And there's lots of reasons. I've just jotted some down. Some of us work off the farm, and when we work off the farm, normally the guy that's writing our check gets first billing in terms of our time. Sometimes cattle and forages are a secondary enterprise on the farm, and that means they get done after the more important enterprises get done. Maybe we have old or poorly maintained equipment that causes us to have breakdowns and delays in harvesting. But probably the biggest one is just simply having poor curing conditions combined with a heavy first cutting in May. And that often limits when we cut our hay. We just don't have enough days without rain to cut it and get it cured before rain comes again. This is just an interesting chart that Matthew Dixon put together from our UK Ag Weather Center, and it shows the top 10 wettest years on record. And what I want you to note is that 5 of those 10 years came in a period of 2011 to 2020. So we're measuring from 1895 to 2020, and 5 of the 10 years came in that period of 2011 to 2020. That tells us we're trending towards more moisture. And that's what this graph shows. If you look at the eastern United States, we're tending to have increased amount of annual precipitation. The western United States, unfortunately, is tending towards less annual precipitation. So this is going to make it more challenging for us to get hay harvested in the spring, especially. This is the average baling days, and they tend to be decreasing. If we look at Lexington location, and a baling day is 3 curing days followed by a 4th day to bale that cured forage. If we look at available baling days in May for 2000 to 2021, we had 5.5. If we looked at 2017 to 2021, that decreased to 4. That's a loss of 1.5 baling days. And you're saying 1.5 doesn't sound like a lot of loss, but if we only start with 5.5, that's over a 20% loss in baling days. The point is that we're having fewer days to make dry hay with as we get into May. So how do we manage for high quality hay with even fewer baling days? Well, the answer is we need to shorten that period between when we mow that forage and when we bale it, right? And we can do that 2 ways, either by speeding up curing or baling at a higher moisture. And really, to be honest, our best option may be to use baleage. So that's allowing us to cut one day and roll that hay and wrap it the next day. And that's going to shorten that period between cutting and baling and allow us to harvest forage at the correct stage of maturity. Because we don't have to wait for 4 days, we can do it in 2 rather than 4 days. There's been a lot of interest in using bale as a rain management tool, and we've seen more and more producers doing this. In general, we've always said that there's a moisture range between 20 and 40% moisture that neither hay nor silage does a really good job of preserving that forage. But we're seeing more and more producers wrapping almost dry hay, and they're referring to it as sweet hay. And we think this sweet hay is going through a partial fermentation. And they're using this as a rain management tool. So the hay's almost dry enough, it looks like rain is imminent. So instead of letting that hay get rained on, they bale it and then wrap it and exclude the oxygen from that system. So we did a study that evaluated moisture content in the silage on the pH and nutritive value of a hay. So what we did was we took a tall fescue crop that was immediately cut, and we started to ensile it every 2 hours until it was dry enough to make as hay. And we evaluated the pH and the nutritive value of each one of those harvests. And this was the result. So on this graph, we have silage on the y-axis and then dry matter and ensiling on the x-axis. So what I want you to notice, as we went from wet to dry, the reduction in pH was less. So the pH was higher. When we're in the ideal moisture range of 55 to 60% moisture, we had a pH that was somewhere between 5 and 5.5, and that's exactly where we want to be with a good baleage. As we got drier, that pH creeped up until we reached about a pH of 6 at 80% dry matter, so when it's almost dry enough to bale as hay. So the point is the drier the forage gets, the less the fermentation is going to be, and the higher the pH is going to be. Even so, we got very little spoilage in our silos that we made, and we preserved total digestible nutrients and crude protein as we moved from wet to dry forage. And the key to keeping the forage quality was excluding oxygen from the system. So if we're going to do this, we got to make sure that we get lots of plastic on that bale to exclude oxygen from that system. The one thing that we suffer with when we do this, when we're wrapping drier than optimal range, is we have reduced aerobic stability when we open that bale back up. So that means that it's not going to last as long once we open it up. It's not as big of a deal when we're feeding it in the winter months, and if we're only putting out enough hay for 1 or 2 days at a time. So here are the take-home points. Sustainable hay production programs require well-designed soil fertility program. The single most important factor impacting forage quality is stage of maturity at harvest. Weather trends in the eastern United States are tending to favor higher rainfall and fewer baling days. Bale silage could be a good management tool for shortening the period between cutting and baling, allowing us to harvest our forage at the optimal growth stage. All right, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact your local extension agent. If they can't help you or you can't get a hold of them, you're always welcome to give me a call. My contact information is below. If you're interested in finding out more about forages, you can go to our webpage that's located at the University of Kentucky Extension Service page. You can reach it by scanning this QR code. All right, thank you for your time and have a great day.